Welcome to the InfoMullet YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content, please like or share. And if you'd like to support the InfoMullet by becoming a mulleteer, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. And that brings up the strategic risk that is, and I use this diagram to show what I mean. This is an article. So I partner with Science Decoded. That's a mulleteer who is actually a lab technician who works with COVID-19, works in genetics. They're doing a lot of research on the ground in the field with the actual virus, and they look at variants and vaccines. So on the InfoMullet, you'll see these vaccine-related articles that sound way smarter than I am. That's Science Decoded. We have a partnership, and we shared an article that used this as a cover picture. And it was when the new variant emerged in the United Kingdom, and this is the strategic risk. So for those who are not familiar, the left picture is D-Day landing in World War II, right? This is an image at D-Day. There's lots of machines, lots of people. You got landing craft unloading people. You've got all this stuff happening. That's the tactical risk of a COVID-19 response. If you screw up the D-Day landing, you're pushed back. You're not marching on Germany to end World War II. You're losing that opportunity. That's the risk of having a bad pandemic response. That's the tactical risk. You can still win the war, but it's going to be longer, harder, and you're going to lose more people. The strategic risk, the one on the right, that is a nuclear bomb. And the strategic risk in World War II is that before we were able to defeat Germany, they would beat us in the race for a nuclear bomb and have deployable nuclear bombs, and that would change everything. The strategic risk in COVID-19 is as all these people get sick. Each person who is sick has millions and millions of these virus particles within them, and each virus particle has a chance of mutating. And as it mutates, it may mutate in a way that renders our ability to deal with it ineffective. And these mutations may only be 1 in a billion, right? A mutation that is sufficient enough to what we classify as a variant that is sufficient enough to change something about the virus itself. And these can appear in several ways. So the types of mutations we're worried about is it affects the accuracy of our existing tests. It affects the efficacy of therapeutics, so those mitigation measures I mentioned, those things. You've got to change the public health interventions because of the spread. It increases the virulence or spread, or the worst case is it makes our existing vaccines ineffective. And it could be any combination of these things. And what we saw beginning in the UK in late December is we began to see the identification of these strategic risk variants. Now, I want to be clear up front, no hyperbole, no scary language or anything like that. There is no variant yet that renders the existing vaccines ineffective. So that's the good news. The bad news is we are now starting to see these variants crop up more frequently. And I'll run through, I've got a CDC, again, all the links are in the document, but the CDC has identified 3 main variants. B117 is the one that cropped up in the United Kingdom, and this one is the one that has reached the US. This map you see in front of you, if it's light blue, there are 0 cases of B117 having been reported. If it is a darker blue, that is 1 or more cases. The state with the most cases is California. Texas has a few, Florida has a few now. And what this B117 does is it doesn't render the vaccine immune, but it's much more virulent. And I'll show you just how much more virulent in a second here with the Ireland example. But that means it spreads much more easily. You got to be much more on top of your measures, and it runs through the population even faster. That, going back to our wave charts, as you bring up more people into hospitalization faster, you fill up that capacity more quickly, you fail to break the curve, you have more fatalities. That's what makes this virus more lethal, not that you're more likely to die just on any chance, but it will fill up the hospitals faster and cause it. So this variant has already made it to the US. And again, there is another variant that is the South African variant called 1351. That is different than the UK variant. In South Africa, that is also more virulent. None of those cases have come to the US now. And the third variant the CDC is tracking is P1. And P1 is the first variant that may be more difficult to detect as our test. Like when we do antibody tests where we have an existing set of markers we're looking for, P1 is the first one that's changed enough that it may render some of our testing for antibodies, not necessarily the symptomatic testing, but the antibodies testing less effective. Again, doesn't mean it renders a vaccine. But the problem with this uncontrolled spread is the more people you have get it worldwide. Remember, the pandemic's a worldwide thing. No one cares that the US is doing this on its own. If the pandemic's anywhere, it's everywhere. And where these variants rise, they're going to spread. So as the globe begins to struggle with this wave 2 and these mass numbers, Science Decoded is predicting 2 to 5 significant variants in the next year. And these significant variants are ones that hit that list that I talked about. They are more virulent. They reduce the effectiveness of our existing testing, either on antibody or generic. They may render the vaccines immune. They may require new policy health interventions. They're predicting, Science Decoded is predicting 5 to 20 more of these variants over the next years. So that's the risk. That strategic risk is that while we're ditzing around playing with pandemic response on the tactical level, not getting our act together, it's going to be like we screwed up the D-Day landing, and while we're unscrewing that up, Germany gets to the nuclear bomb, and all of a sudden the game changes because everything we've done up to that point is now rendered to some degree mute and ineffective. So let me pause here and go. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow the Info Mullet, visit us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you'd like notifications when we post new video content, click on the red subscribe button below the video. If you've ever wanted to become a mulleteer and support the Info Mullet, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate the support.